Hey everyone, I'm Josh. This is Alex. We are the target audience. Content is made for everybody, but we think it's specifically made for us and hopefully for you as well. Today we will be reviewing and discussing the brand new installment in the Matrix franchise, The Matrix Resurrections. Now, this movie is already available on HBO Max as well as being in theaters, so we're just going to jump right into spoilers here. If you haven't seen The Matrix Resurrections and you don't want it spoiled, although I'll be honest, not a ton really here to spoil plot-wise, but the few reveals that there are, if you don't want that spoiled, go watch the movie first. This is your final warning. Alex, we both saw the movie. Is it fair to say that we both didn't like the movie?
If I were to say this is my favorite movie of the year, I'd be lying.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, it just didn't do it for me. Like, I'm sure we'll get into everything, but it felt. I saw a quote that someone put online, like, it's trying to be smarter than it actually is. I'm like, that. I think that sums it up, and it's too meta. I think that's how you say that word. Like, oh, it's like. Not gonna shouldn't make a fourth game, it's like all that, yeah. And like Matrix is about this. I'm like, this is painful. But the intro, I'm like, oh, it's a video game. I thought they were gonna go that route. I'm glad they didn't stick with that. It was just a front. But the action set pieces, like everything looked crisp. Keanu Reeves is Keanu Reeves. He is the more successful Nicolas Cage, as I like to say. I don't know, he's just charming, but like when they give him like one line of dialogue, no, one line of dialogue, and it's oh yeah, like he does better when he has like a little bit more to say. I feel like they keep giving him one-liners. I'm like, enough, like, or even his one-liner, I still know kung fu. It's like, I don't know. Yeah. He's better as John Wick in my opinion, but in this like they kept swinging and like nothing was hitting for me. We'll get into it as we go on, but yeah, just whatever. How about you?
Yeah, so I discussed it when we reacted to the trailer, which is one of the most viewed videos on our channel, so maybe if you're watching this, you saw a reaction to that trailer, but just in case you didn't, I still have not seen any of the sequels, either of the two sequels to The Matrix, which I just found this out, Alex. Did you know that those both came out in 2003, 6 months apart, the two Matrix sequels?
Yeah, same year. Isn't that crazy?
That's very interesting. Anyway, I've only seen the original Matrix, which I watched earlier this year, and I really like it. But going into this one, I was hoping, like with most reboots or whatever you want to call a movie like this, yeah, if you watch the sequels, it helps, but you just kind of, it'll bring you along for the ride, right? This movie does not bring you along for the ride. It is the most ruthless movie when it comes to not explaining to you stuff that you missed, yet at the same time uses more old footage from old movies than really any like reboot I've ever seen. I mean, it will show you direct scenes from some of those sequels without actually talking about what those scenes are. So it's kind of like the worst of both worlds, because the movie seems to be so heavily relying on the last movies, but if you haven't seen all three of those movies, you're going to be missing out on really the plot of what's driving the plot of this one. That's how I felt.
Here's the thing. I saw those two other movies, and I still don't know what's going on. I mean, there's a couple recognizable characters, like Jada Pinkett Smith, who plays herself just a lot older, like 60 years older. So she must have been really young in whichever one she was in, Resurrections or Revolutions. I think she was in this thing.
So you already kind of brought it up. At the beginning of the movie, he's reintroduced as Thomas Anderson, and he's obviously, you can kind of put together he's back in the Matrix, but it doesn't present it as that right away. And they're saying that the first three movies of the Matrix movies as we know them are actually video games that were created by Thomas Anderson, and now they're pushing him to make Matrix 4. And it's a whole bunch of, sub commentary on reboots in general and, kind of our reboot franchise culture in movies, but it talks about it through the lens of video games, but it's really the same thing. And I agree with what you were saying earlier, Alex. It comes off as very preachy, very kind of unself-aware. It's bordering on the line of, like, at first I was like, oh, the movie's, like, aware that it's an unnecessary reboot, so maybe it's gonna, like, flip that on its head, and it really doesn't. It kind of like approaches that subject, but then the movie gets going and then they forget about it.
Yeah, like, why? It's like, we know. It's like, we're not clueless to these type of things. It's like, don't have to tell us that we're dumb consumers. It's like, fuck, man, just why, like, and then, like, I'm sorry to jump ahead, but even on with, like, the one French dude, I still don't understand what those characters were, and they were just yelling at us. He was basically yelling at us, like, oh, movies were much better back then. Oh, it's like, what the fuck is going on? But even before that, we're introduced to Bugs, Sec, who's, like, the tech guy, and they're, like, at first, I thought they were rewatching, like, the first scene from the first Matrix, but no, it's, like, a different actor playing the Trinity character, and it's, like, this elaborate trap, and then Morpheus is in it, but it's not really Morpheus. It's Yahya Abdul-Mateen playing, like, a coded version that Neo made of Morpheus. It's so confusing.
Very convoluted. The best thing I understood is that Neo, or Thomas Anderson, created a code of Morpheus as a test to, I guess, see if he would break out of the game, which he does. Why does Thomas Anderson, not knowing that he's actually in the Matrix, make that as a test? They kind of explain that he subconsciously knew. Very glossed over. It was just kind of a really bad excuse as to why they had a different Morpheus. I didn't really like that at all.
And why did, like, we'll get on to, like, the big bad, but why did they allow him to do that? You know what I mean?
Why are they making the Matrix 4 inside of the Matrix? Like, what else would prompt Neo to realize he's in the Matrix than forcing him to every day work on the 4th installment of this game series? What was their goal? I don't understand.
It's like, the entire time I'm like, you guys caused this to happen. Like, this is all your fault.
And I did kind of understand that Neil Patrick Harris's character was supposed to kind of be like this arrogant, like, leader of whatever's going on, who thinks like, oh, my old boss didn't want you guys around, but I know that, putting him in the same, like, room in those pods with Trinity caused the energy, and he was using their bodies. And I got all that, but I felt like they took that and then jumped really far to make an excuse as to why the movie was happening.
I think once after we're introduced to the new crew, which I liked, they were all neat. We go to the new city, which is Io. Now, if you know, the original city was called Zion, so I'm sure there's some dumb reason they took off the Z and the N and just kept the 2 middle letters. Oh, Neo's gone, so, and then I don't know what Z could stand for, but we're introduced to Jada Pinkett Smith, who is in one of the first ones, and, like, she's this leader, and they hide Neo, and then the team breaks him out anyway to go save Trinity.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of, like, political stuff of Jada Pinkett Smith arguing with Bugs, right, about, like, oh, we shouldn't do this, we should do this, basically Jada Pinkett Smith is like, we should stay hidden and, like, live in this community, and Bugs is like, okay, well, you're just letting all these people still be used by the Matrix, like, what happened to breaking out of it? And okay, that all seems interesting, but oh wait, now we gotta move on with the plot, forget about all that. We're moving forward.
And, like, no one seems fazed that Neo's fucking alive. It's been 60 years. It's like, how are you alive, sir? You died, and, like, you've only aged 20 years. Let's talk about Smith, Agent Smith, who's forget the actor's name, but we really liked him in Mindhunter. Wonderful. And, like, his cat, like,
Jonathan Groff.
Yeah, Jonathan. And, like, when he's talking about himself, like, the meta, like, oh, now I have these piercing blue eyes and I'm much more handsome. I'm like, he wouldn't talk like this. And, like, he's famous for saying Mr. Anderson, and throughout the whole movie he calls him Tom. It's like, I don't think he ever called him Tom. He didn't feel like he was Agent Smith, like, at all. And, like, this is the part where I'm, like, most confused and just, like, this lost, where they're in that, they're led into that trap. It's a trap, and Smith is there, and I don't, like, seeing the other movies, I don't know what the hell those other characters were from the other time periods. a limit. I don't know. I'm just watching this happen. I'm just like, it took me 2 days to watch this because busy. And I'm just watching this like I don't know what's happening. It's like and this French guy is just spewing all this like meta, like oh everything's much better back in all this shit. I'm like, aren't you from like the 1800s? Why are you talking about movies?
I watched this movie with my dad on Christmas Eve, and during that sequence when they fall into this trap, he got completely lost, and he was like, "Who are these people? What's going on?" And I'm like, "Dude, I have no fucking idea. Like, I had no clue what was going on." And I, in my ignorance of not seeing the sequels, thought, "Oh, this is clearly like things that were set up in the sequels that I don't know of." That's all I could guess because I had no idea what was happening.
Like, why would Neil Patrick Harris allow him to have this computer where he could do that, where he could create a modal? It's like. They could have created any scenario for him where this wouldn't happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They could have just made him like a branch manager at a Target, and one of his employees or coworkers was Trinity. It's like, yeah. Why did you give him the knowledge that he made the Matrix? He wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah, and he even mentions in the movie at a certain part where he's talking to the new Morpheus, and he's like, I'm working at a place where we're making Matrix 4. They're not exactly hiding it. Like, he makes a comment about it, and it leads you to believe there's going to be a reason for it. And unless we both missed it, and Neil Patrick Harris's whole villain monologue towards the end, he explains why he brought back Keanu, brought back Neo, brought back Trinity, put him in that room together. He explains all of that. None of that has to do with Neo making the Matrix 4. So, I don't know. And again, with that leading me to that, so they go to get Trinity back, they do this whole plan, and then Neil Patrick Harris, after being revealed as the main villain, kind of has his old villain monologue. And there's a few things to me that if your movie is 2.5 hours long, and you still have to have these expositional tricks, such as a opening narration, or like certain things that would happen, one of those things being a villain evil plan monologue. Like, if your movie is 2.5 hours long and you still need to have your main villain have a 5-minute explanation of what their evil plan is to the protagonist, maybe your like script isn't that good that you couldn't like explain that throughout the movie.
Yeah, I couldn't say that any better myself. Some quick positives I mentioned in the beginning, but action, the martial arts, the choreography, the way they pay tribute to the similar physical type deals, like when Smith is doing like the super fast punching to his ribs, like that was like from the first one too, and like the wall flip sideways while shooting the guns, all that stuff is super slick. There's only one effect that just really threw me off that I've only seen or remember from one other movie, and it was Peter Jackson's King Kong in the first half hour, where it's like they're going fast but everything's like really choppy and low quality. It's like it happened a lot during like the slow motion scene with Neil Patrick Harris. Mm-hmm. Like when Neil Patrick Harris was moving while everything was slow motion, it was that weird choppy effect. Mm-hmm. And it's like that was the only thing that threw me off. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And if he's able to go that fast, it's like I just don't understand how he could lose.
You mentioned some positives. I wanted to mention a couple more. The way they reversed bullet time, where it's like now we're using it against you, the bullet time. I thought that was cool. How the villains were able to do that. And then the moment where Trinity, Carrie-Anne Moss realizes she's Trinity, and they have that like blow up moment in the bar, and they do the procedure where they're like switching her consciousness like between Bugs and her body. I can't think of how exactly to explain it, but I thought it was a really cool like just idea of like, oh, in order to bring her out, we have to like use you for a minute and then plug her into herself. That was a pretty cool moment, I thought, and a cool idea. I feel like this movie was just a bunch of little cool ideas that maybe could work in a Matrix sequel, but the actual movie was like absolutely nothing that I'd be interested in. All right, so I'll just say this. This wasn't the worst movie of the year or anything. I think the most appealing thing about it is like, oh, what if we made a Matrix movie, but like now because effects are good now? And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, out of all the stuff the franchises to bring back and make another movie, the Matrix is one that actually could make sense because it was made in a time where effects were like just becoming a big thing to that degree, and now they're like much better, so you could do a lot of cool things. So this isn't the worst movie visually. It looks cool. There's a lot of cool effects stuff in there. I watched it and I wasn't like, stabbing my eyes out. It's just that the actual story was so insanely uninteresting that I was just waiting for the cool stuff to happen. And then when the cool stuff happened, I was like, oh, cool. And then that's it. So I never really want to watch it again. I wouldn't really recommend anyone watch it. But it wasn't, terrible.
Yeah, I watched it once over 2 days because of time, and then earlier today I started watching. I got like quarter the way through. I'm just like, this is tough, man. This is tough. Like, I'm sure people will be ripping us apart in the comments for missing stuff,
Please
or
do.
just not understand. Oh yeah, please pump the algorithm. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe 10 years down the line we can revisit this.
I mean,
talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, just imagine, like, if they did want to make more movies, it's like, cut out most of the bullshit in the beginning, right? Like, have him in the Matrix, but like cut most of that Matrix 4 storyline. Cut out most of the stuff with Jada Pinkett Smith and the whole political stuff that goes nowhere because she just ends up changing her mind. You could cut out almost an hour of this movie and have like an hour and 45-minute movie that could actually like be pretty fun, and it probably still wouldn't be the best because the writing's not the best and the story's not the most interesting, but it could just be like a watchable Matrix movie made current day, but it's just stretched out for no reason.
And then, like, the thing, like, everyone's looking down at their phones, and then Neo looks up. It's like, first of all, what kind of elevator is that? Where there's two elevators, right in the same thing. That makes no sense. It's like cool shot, but it's like
And with that stuff too, I just feel like the movie's kind of up its own ass. It's like, oh, isn't this like a fun and original? Like, people are dumb and use their phones. It's like, I'm literally watching this on my phone. I wasn't, but I'm sure people were. It's like. It's just like kind of missed the mark. I feel like they tried to really make it seem smart, and it just didn't. I'm sure some people think it was maybe. I'm sure some people like it more than us, but really missed the mark for me.
It's like, quit telling us we're stupid. We know.
Yeah, exactly. Why not flip it on its head and tell us why technology is actually good? But no, that would be too difficult.
Well, that's all I got to say about that for right now. Yeah.
Well, that was fun shitting on that for half an hour. We don't usually do this, but we do review movies, and we react to movie trailers, and we also are watching The Book of Boba Fett, Star Wars The Clone Wars. We will be watching Peacemaker when that starts next month, so subscribe to the target audience if you haven't, so you don't miss any of those videos.
Yep, and that'll be it. I'm Alex, this is Josh, we are the target audience. Listen, content is made for absolutely everybody, but we think it's specifically made for us, and hopefully for you too. Thanks for coming on this ride on the Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah, that's what the original ship is called. And we'll see you in the next one.